everyone, and welcome. Hope you all enjoyed our dramatic countdown there. I am Kayla Griswold, and I am a client success manager here at Peppy, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be hosting this conversation today. The session is the role of employers in proactive men's health at work, and the key word here is proactive because we are so far past the point of just simple awareness alone. So we're here to discuss what this looks like when you take a practical, lasting action that really helps men look after their health and help the organizations that you work for to build cultures that make that the norm. So today we're going to unpack 6 simple, proven steps that can make men's health a living, breathing part of your workplace culture, from leadership visibility to everyday habits as well. Before we get into it, I need to go over a little bit of housekeeping quickly. So we'll have a Q&A that you can pop in your questions throughout the session, and we'll get to that at the end. Make sure we answer as many as possible, but please don't hold back. Ask any questions that come to mind, because if you're thinking it, someone else probably is too. We will have a poll at the beginning, so please do participate in our poll. And if you have any technical issues throughout the session, please reach out to marketing@peppy.health. And finally, this event is being recorded, so we'll be able to share this with you after. So thank you so much. All right, amazing. Let's now meet our incredible panel today. I am joined by people who talk the talk and walk the walk every single day by supporting those around them at work. So firstly, we have Dave Dixon, who is our Health and Safety Wellbeing Manager at Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, NDA, which happens to be one of my brilliant clients. So I have the privilege of working with their team day to day. And Dave has been a driving force behind some of the really brilliant men's health initiatives and bringing leadership, storytelling, and action together in a really, really authentic way. So, Dave, thank you for being here.
Thanks. Pleased to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Dave. And then we have Bernadette Kilbane, Peppy's lead men's health practitioner. She is our clinical powerhouse with deep expertise and experience supporting men across urology, renal, and gastroenterology medicine. That's a tough one. She knows exactly what stops men from seeking help and how to change that. So, welcome, Bernadette. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Kayla. Can't wait for today's session. Thank you.
Of course. And last but not least, we have Erin Barnett, who is Peppy's Director of Lifestyle Healthcare, with 15 years as a personal trainer, global fitness presenter, and all-around energy ball. And for those of you who are our clients joining today's session and users of Peppy, you'll probably be a little bit starstruck because you'll recognize Erin from his many fitness videos on the Peppy app. Erin is brilliant in helping people take those simple, practical steps to really feel and function better every single day. So, hello to Erin. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction, and I'm really looking forward to being a part of this team today.
Thanks, Erin. Amazing. All right, so we're going to start and kick off just with a poll to kind of level set and see how everyone is feeling. So we'll do that now. And the question is, how proactive do you think your organization is when it comes to men's health? So please take a moment here. We have lots of questions flooding in, or answers flooding in. This is amazing. So we have very proactive, it's part of our well-being strategy. We have somewhat proactive, we do a few things during awareness weeks, and then finally aware but not active yet, and then not on the radar yet. So we're seeing this breakdown here come in. Amazing. All right, great. Let's look at the results here. So, all right, we have the majority somewhat proactive. Great to see. So doing a few things internally. Next is aware but not active yet. All right, so lots that we can do there. And then a few very proactive. Great to see this, and some not on the radar yet. So super helpful just to kind of have this insight as we go through today's session, especially for our experts who are joining the call. So thank you for that. Before we get into the practical side of today's session, I really just wanted to start and take a minute to set the scene, because the data around men's health is honestly pretty striking and deserves a bit of our attention at the very beginning. So around the world, men are dying on an average 5 years earlier than women And it's not from biology, it's often from things that could have been prevented with earlier action and support. So, just to look quickly together at some of these stats. So, 3 out of 4 suicides are men. 52% of men are estimated to be concerned about taking time off work for mental health purposes. So that's a big one for today's conversation of within the workplace. What does this mean? Women aged 16 to 44 are almost twice as likely as men of the same age to visit their GP within a year. Men are 67% more likely to die from non-gender specific cancers. And finally, prostate cancer is now the most diagnosed cancer in England. And overarchingly, I think there's just a big challenge being that men are far less likely to seek help early. And research shows that 1 in 5 men will not go to the GP even when they're worried about a symptom. So this can be due to several barriers, which we'll talk about today. So stigma, lack of awareness, or also just practical access to that healthcare. So when you think about it from an employer perspective, which is, I know, why a lot of you are joining today, this becomes a really, really huge issue. Poor men's health does not just affect the individual, it affects performance, absence rates, safety, retention, and ultimately the bottom line. But the good news is that within the workplace, it is really one of the very few environments actually that we can reach men early before they reach this crisis point. So that is exactly why today's conversation with this incredible group of panelists is a crucial one. Awareness is just, it's no longer enough. And it's really time to move from talking about men's health to really embedding it into workplace culture in a way that actually drives prevention and action. And that's what we're here to explore together now. So within PEPI, we have identified 6 key steps that help organizations do exactly this. So practical, proven actions that shift men's health from just that awareness to everyday practice. So we are going to walk through these together with our panel today, get their perspectives on what they look like in the real world. And we're going to kick it off with the first one. And just a reminder to everyone as we go through these steps, if questions come to mind, please pop them in the Q&A and we will get to them in the end. So let's start with step 1. We have model healthy leadership. So when leaders talk openly about their health, it's, no surprise that that is beneficial. So whether it's taking time off for stress, going for a checkup, or just being really honest about challenges that they're facing, it sends such a powerful message to everyone else that is, looking after yourself. It's not a weakness, it's the norm, and it's important. So my first question for our fabulous panelists, and Bernadette, I'll come to you first with this one, if all right. But what does good leadership role modeling actually look like in practice? So we'll start there.
Thanks, Kayla. And just to give it some context as well, off the back of what you've just said about the lack of male health-seeking behaviours or opportunities, this is why this role modelling is so important in the workplace. So I think it's the importance of that very real voice, that very real voice that isn't a token gesture, but there's almost like a consistent approach to sharing within your organisation. And like you've mentioned, you've touched on both the physical and mental health aspects that there is parity in addressing this. We know both areas are so essential for making improvements in men's health. And by being visible, leaders can give that permission. But I do want to spotlight a point that it's not all about the leadership. It's the peer-to-peer support in your organisation, regardless of the size of your organisation. And it doesn't have to be formal. It can be that informal opportunity. How are you doing? Giving somebody that door opening opportunity to say how they feel, or sharing how you feel first, or something positive change you've made, or you've interacted in some positive way for your health. And you're free to share it. You don't have to share results, just your experience of it. I think anything in that circumstance we can turn to a positive.
Yeah, I'll jump on the back of that as well, to be fair, Bernadette. you know, I've had that situation this morning. In fact, I have had a conversation with one of my team, a fellow male colleague, about, you know, he's a dad and he's picking up all sorts of illnesses at the moment. And I've come into work feeling a little bit under the weather this morning. And so we just had a normal conversation about like, what do you do? Do you exercise when you're feeling a bit ill? I know he likes to go to the gym. And how do you return to work quickly? Because he seems to bounce back really quick. And it was an open and honest and kind of a vulnerable conversation as a leader, you know, being able to actually flip that model and allow him to lead with some advice for me. I think, you know, going back to Bernadette's analogy, it helps open the door. It helps grease the hinges of the door if you show that little bit of authenticity, which is vulnerability and strength. We don't always have to be on. We don't always have to be strong. We can be weak and we can be vulnerable too. And I think showing a blend of both and just being really honest is absolutely key. And I know that as a result, I have a really good relationship with my male colleagues, and we're able to talk really openly and proactively about our health. And that creates a really strong environment for where I know that my team know that they can take time off, that they can take time out. And I understand as a leader, something else that's really important as a leader is knowing what my team has available to them as far as support. So knowing what I know what our PEPI EAPs are. I know what our PEPI health insurance is, etc., and being able to share that with them and is a really big thing.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, I think we're lucky we have 3 leaders on the call today who all are very good managers. So they lead by example, which is, yeah, sometimes rare. But I think one thing as well, Bernadette, to your point with it's not just on managers, right? So it is that peer-to-peer relationship and connection that also builds that trust and connection internally to create that safe environment. Of course, it's important for managers still to model that. But again, it's that direct peer-to-peer connection as well.
And if I can just jump in there, it's a little bit like all your other policies and procedures that may well be perfect in black and white, but it's how they operate. And I think once you operate in that space where your leaders are doing the right things, people realise then that it's meant genuinely as care for the employees and not just a policy or something written down. And I think that's something that works well with us. And to pick up on the all layers of leaders, and you've got right from very senior leaders through to you know, leading hands or supervisors. They've got a real important part to play in that as well. So in our framework, we've got a recognition of that. But I think you're right. It's those conversations that are probably most powerful.
Absolutely. And I think too, when it comes to leaders, it really does as well take one person to open that door. Same as peer-to-peer, right? It's someone has to take that brave step of kind of setting the norm and setting the tone for others to then feel comfortable doing so. So amazing. Thank you all. We're going to shift over to step 2 now. So know your numbers. So this one is about awareness for both individuals and organizations. So know your numbers. So really what this looks like is for individuals, it's things like blood pressure, cholesterol, mental well-being scores. For employers, it's more so data on things such as absence, engagement, and usage of health benefits. So my first question is, how can organizations help people understand and act on their own health data without it feeling too clinical or scary in that way?
Yeah, shall I dive in there?
Sure.
Aware that I'm very clinical, but obviously with great expertise in this area. I think this again leads on from vulnerability and judgment around men's health. So I think a key place to begin really is to provide the context, because if you're spotlighting, say, somebody's weight, waist measurement, blood pressure, somebody can feel incredibly judged and vulnerable. They don't want to perhaps highlight an issue or a problem that they have or dwell on it. And I think by providing the context, as in why that is important within the context of men's health, then you get greater engagement and more positive experience in terms of helping support your workforce become educated, improving their health, but improving their health in the workplace too, which is a win-win for the organisation, help and support those acknowledge their own risk factors in that judgment-free area, and using language that works with men. Don't almost present like word soup around focusing on heart health or high blood pressure. If I tell you men are at an increased risk of high blood pressure at an earlier age than women, then that's really hard hitting. That can provoke somebody to take the action to either get their blood pressure checked professionally or take the initiative themselves, do it themselves. We need to, stop over medicalizing things. Other numbers we've mentioned, cholesterol risk, type 2 diabetes risk, waist measurement, even simple things like that. We know the excess risk associated with a waist of 37 inches. I'm pulling that one out for you because it's a very simple measurement to take, with the exception of men from South Asian origin who face an increased risk at a lower waist circumference, so 35 inches, creating the opportunities, like I say, for this judgment-free education, but also that almost call to action that you're presenting somebody with within the organisation. You mightn't necessarily be able to offer something on site, but you might have a benefit, you might have access to a benefit, or you can signpost. And I would say that is relatable to any size of organisation.
And I think, Bernadette, that plays into how we approached it, is the information that we get through PEPI, that people can go look for themselves, removes that barrier of embarrassment or fear of being judged. And if it's me, I can go and look at all this range of health issues and decide if any of them are appropriate to me. And as you say, some of the data's hard hitting, and if you make an informed judgment yourself, it's more likely to stick than if somebody's deemed to be preaching at you about say your own health. So it kind of destigmatizes a lot. And we talked about barriers earlier, and that removing the barriers is a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we speak on the same level, Dave. I know we have had the good fortune of working together, so speaking with the very real voice and demonstrating firsthand, whether it's remotely or in person, that you can understand that person, but also the ability to respond on that one-to-one basis. We're presenting on men's health today whilst also acknowledging every man is different, but there are some common risk factors that we can certainly support and improve.
Definitely. And also, I think too, this ties a little bit back to the first point, right, of modeling that behavior too, because if anyone on this call has had a cholesterol test, bring this up in conversation and have that conversation with someone else, which might be their impetus to then go get their own cholesterol test. So it really is all interconnected. And Dave, within our work together as well, I think of the different ways that we create those natural reminders for people around knowing your numbers internally. So whether that's a poster in the loo, and those natural touch points for really people to say, oh yeah, I haven't really thought of that before. It does kind of create those really critical touch points.
Or even when people have and they've put it off for themselves. We've got a great example in one of our sites. Somebody has been engaged with the prostate cancer sort of materials and thought, do you know what, I haven't looked into that, I must go and look at it. Then totally parked it at the back of his brain. Walked out the canteen one day, seen a poster and thought, oh, must do that. Went off and did it. He's found out he's got prostate cancer, unfortunately. Fortunately, he knows had he not had that prompt, he would have waited a lot longer, and the results could have been a lot different. So we know in our own experience that works already. And when I spoke to the individual, I said, I'm sorry, it's terrible news. And he said, no, it's good news. He said, because what's happened as a result has given me the option to get it sorted, because I dealt with it early enough. The other scenario is unthinkable, and that's a big sort of pat on the back to us as an organisation for following that route, I think, and probably one of the biggest examples of the approach, certainly.
No doubt. And unfortunately, that's not the first time we've heard that, which again, it's that preventative action and support that needs to be there from the very start. Brilliant. Dave, I'm actually going to come to you for step 3. So moving right along. So normalizing conversations, which is something that Dave, I know we talk about all the time, and I will toot Dave's horn till the cows come home because Dave is really a genius when it comes to normalizing conversations internally. But awareness, as we've said, awareness days, they're great. But if people are only hearing about men's health once a year, we are completely missing the point. So, Dave, what are some of the most effective ways that you've seen internally kind of making conversations feel natural all year round? How have you done that?
We use some of our campaigns create the ability to talk off the back of that, but particularly having specialist areas that cover men's health, women's health, menopause, and things like that are designed specifically to drive conversations around things people wouldn't normally talk about. So, for example, our men's health really focuses in on the barriers. Remember we mentioned earlier the barriers about why men are more reluctant to go. So at the base of our sort of enrolling with Peppy on this, that was one of our key areas to sort of try drawing out some examples of where that's the case, and whether it's a example of where somebody is kind of too proud, too scared, feels like they're the breadwinner in their family, and if they sort of start being weak, that's some sort of weakness that they can't carry. They haven't got time for themselves. That will be an issue. So we've started to do exactly what we talked about in the previous steps of making those conversations a bit more normal, and it takes people who are really engaged in the topic to start with. So I know from a mental health perspective, we did a little video session on opening up about mental health issues, for example, and we had to find some willing horses to do that, to show, and I was actually one of those. I didn't feel it was able to say I'm not going to do it because I'm one of the people advocating it. So and that got massively positive feedback from people to open up, and we know just from the few different videos that we've done on this that we've had people come out to say, I'm struggling, and knowing others are struggling actually is quite good. And my key takeaway, my example was get help early. The bit between starting to suffer and finally asking for help is kind of unnecessary suffering, and the aim would be for us to get that period down to the minimal area. But once the conversations start, you can definitely tell people are less inclined to keep quiet about these areas, and they start opening up, and be that via a private conversation or a share in a meeting. And we have a big culture of having a safety share at the start of a meeting. It tends to be physical safety related. What we tend to find now is that we are a health and safety team. We do more health and safety shares as well. So it's more than just bringing the H a bit bigger in the health and safety aspect of it. So talking about it more breeds more talking about it, which is just a big positive.
No doubt. And it takes everyone too, right? Like I can see on this call alone, it's not just men joining this call, there's women joining this call. It takes every single voice. And obviously I know today's topic is about men's health, but I mean, Dave, internally too, you're a huge champion for menopause and women's health internally at NDA too. So again, it's bringing in new people to the conversation and
To be fair, I
opening.
got a lot of learning out of the importance of speaking about things that you perceive to be difficult, or people perceive to be difficult to speak about with you. When I went over to the menopause side as a male advocate, because that was kind of an uncomfortable space. What if I say the wrong thing? What if people think I'm trying to trample all over women's issues when it's nothing to do with me? But I couldn't have been more wrong. And actually opening up the conversation has enabled more good stuff to come out, more good sharing to come out, and enable us to do more good work. And because I'd done the menopause stuff first, the men's health then was a natural extension of that. Well, how can we help more men who are frightened to speak about this? And we've had people like Bernadette in the room to come to talk to a room full of men. And there's a lot of men who wouldn't necessarily want to share in front of females about a whole host of things. But once you've done it, and with somebody like Bernadette in the room, she makes it so much easier. You can see the change just in a few minutes. Once people start to share, more people start to share, which means you've got more of your issues coming out and are able to deal with them. And as we said earlier, if you don't pick those up, you're just storing a problem for your organisation.
Yeah, no, it's true. Bernadette's one of those people that, you know, everyone feels comfortable sharing everything with her. So it's
very disarming. You have to be careful you don't overshare with her.
true. I'm just conscious of time. We have so much to squeeze out. So I'm just going to move on to step 4 for us now. Promote preventative health. And again, this is all about, you know, how are we creating this to be embedded in culture? So especially for men who might not see themselves as the kind of people who engage with well-being. So Aaron, I might come to you first with this one, just kind of from a holistic perspective.
Yeah, I think if men, particularly if we're talking to men that aren't, you know, so, you know, interested in well-being, I think it really requires motivation and understanding. So therefore making sure that the language we're using is easy to understand, and, you know, putting it in really simple terms that make that kind of, make it easy. You know, and also a little thing of trying to, you know, use action to create conversation. So creating an environment where men feel like conversation is easier to have around their health and wellness. So, you know, men tend to respond better to shoulder communication, not just sitting down in front of someone and trying to have a talk about something. So creating environments, creating small, easy wins, tasks, meetings. Maybe it's you, if you're working together, getting out and having a walk around the block for your morning meeting with your colleague, your male colleague, and then that, you know, walking side by side just helps create that conversation a little easier. And it shows that it doesn't have to be anything big. To someone that isn't into well-being, you know, going for a walk is taking a step, literally and figuratively.
That's true. I'm actually going to jump to step 6 because that was a beautiful segue, Aaron. It start small and scale up. So taking that first step, what does that look like? So big change, as you just said, it really doesn't have to be huge. We don't need a big budget. We don't need a massive campaign. We just sometimes need one single idea that can really grow. So if you were, and I'll open this up to any of you who want to respond to this, but if you're giving advice to an HR benefits leader who's just starting out on this journey, what is the first thing that they should do?
I would say a positive approach and look at your organisation, because you want something that fits and you communicate that fits with the men in your workplace. We know we support hugely different workplaces, and our approach, we can modify it to get best engagement, to speak and acknowledge the type of industry it's in, the different, although there's very similar challenges and the challenges can be the same, how you approach it, you might have slightly different approach, you might have different other benefits available, like Aaron mentioned, the ability to signpost. So, and it's how you almost pull all those threads together. But whatever you're doing as a first step is never going to be wrong, because you're attempting something positive, and you will modify how your approach as time develops to promote best engagement, I think. So make the first step would be my initial response. Nothing's wrong.
No doubt. Thank you, Bernadette. And the last step, which is step 5, so I'm just shaking things up a little bit here, keeping everyone on their toes, signposting support. So this step is obviously all about making sure people know what's available, people feel safe using it. Everyone has different benefits, you know, and you can have the best well-being offer in the world, but if no one knows it exists, it's completely useless. So what are the smartest ways that you've seen employers, both Erin and Bernadette and Dave, from your perspective internally, how are you making that support visible, approachable for men who might be reluctant to ask for help and take that first step?
Well, I'm very conscious we're speaking across a digital platform, so I think I would say do not bury access to these benefits down a rabbit hole on the intranet. It needs to be accessible, whether it pops up. Again, it might be the name of the benefit, and do you know this helps with X? Encouraging those within the organisation to either share company-wide their experience of engaging with a benefit potentially, or it might be locally. Maybe you inquire in your check-ins, but you ask that person to share within the team. Again, this is ground level up, really. That's on the, yeah, so that's dealing with the in-person, but also on the almost digital side too. The visible side, you mentioned, Kayla, about the signs on the loo doors. I think that's fantastic, whether that's promoting positive health engagement. For example, I know we worked on testicular self-check hangers for the back of the loo doors earlier in the year, to whether it's something about blood pressure, but link it to the action, like what Aaron mentioned. That action needs to be there, not just a health promotion sign. And yeah, sharing experiences.
I think for us practically, and it's not something I've seen across other organisations where I've worked, but it's certainly been something we've done here, is doing in-person events, so wellbeing events. One of the things that does, and it was most pointed at one of our sites in Scotland recently, was that I'm really keen to make sure that people don't just think we're throwing an app at them when in terms of Peppy. It's not, oh, here's an app. We've done wellbeing. Tick. Move on. What we're doing is we're providing a genuine service that is there to get all over these steps and these reluctances to get involved with healthcare for whatever reason. And one of the things I found through walking around, and it was from a point of view of whether people had got issues or whether they hadn't, having a walk around and speaking to them. This is something Bernadette and I did. Walking around and speaking to people at their desks in a predominantly office sort of space. There were all groups of people who had issues and had sought help. People who were probably not engaged with it because they hadn't had issues and probably thought less about the proactive stuff. So, and the underlying thing was it gave us that feeling of it's not just an app; there's people behind it, and the reason we're giving you it is a caring reason, and it's good for be honest and open about the benefits. It's good for you because we care about you, but it's also good for the business that everybody's better. And a great little anecdote was while we're on that walkabout, one of the teams had done a little in-house health thing, which they'd put on a notice board, and somebody they've never met, a nighttime security person, had added themselves to this competition or whatever it was, and engaged. I think it was losing weight. I think it was, and added themselves to this little plan without having met them or engaged with them. So just showing that getting out there and doing visible things works. That was a great little example that we saw.
Brilliant.
And I'll just quickly dive in. I think wellbeing champions, so whether it's somebody who's been on a health journey themselves or it's the preventative side, I think having a mix in your organisation, a mix of different age ranges as well, because you can navigate different challenges at different points in life, where everybody's got a voice and things feel relevant to them is hugely positive. And that sharing experience, Dave just alluded to that. How fantastic is that? But it just shows that opportunity and visibility is key for the positive engagement when it comes to promoting men's health.
Oh, you mean it, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you both. Thank you all. That's a brilliant note to end on. This has been an amazing discussion. Thank you all so much. Before we move into Q&A, we have quite a few questions coming through, which is fantastic. I just want to share that we will be following up after today's event with the recording for everyone. So you have this session on hand. And we also will be sharing a men's health toolkit that brings together everything we've talked about. So all 6 steps of really embedding this proactive men's health at work. It'll be in your inbox soon, so just keep an eye out for it. And you'll have something straight away to take back to your teams that will hopefully be really, really helpful. So in the meantime, we also just want to quickly share that we have an upcoming event as well happening on the 18th of November. It's at 12 o'clock noon, and this is an exclusive demo of our updated men's health product. It's an entire new user experience that is launching first in our men's health service, and we could not be more excited to share this exclusive demo with you all. So feel free to scan this QR code and you'll get the registration page information as well as in the follow-up information after this session. So we will pivot now into the amazing questions that are coming through. There's quite a few, so we're just going to try and get through as many as possible. So let's see here first one that came through. Oh, wow, these are great. Okay, so does the panel have any examples of different strategies that have encouraged engagement with well-being for different generations of men? I like this question.
Well, I think, and I know the value of Aaron here, how important, especially the lifestyle side, the fitness, especially for the younger men that we support. And what we'll often find is that and dive in at any point, Aaron, a door opening opportunity. Often they'll come in with a goal or maybe wanting to change up what they're doing and get support. But then that opens a really valuable door into more health conversations as well. So it's not just, almost making things too dry on the clinical side. It's turning both sides into a positive and moving between the two. And this is the message that we need to send through life as well. But support at all different stages is essential to me to keep the engagement of men. We know in the wider world, the NHS health checks start at 40 for most men. For a lot of men, you'll have lost them by that point, hence why we need to pick some back up, but also get ahead.
That's certainly something we've done in the NDA. We've got quite good links with our younger people in nuclear groups, and we've pushed their way very much on the basis that regardless if you think you've got any health issues, there's a lot of proactive stuff that you can read up on, and we engage with the as I say, the champions that are involved in being our wellbeing champions, and we kind of very recognizing of the fact that there are these groups of people who probably need different things.
Thank you, Dave. Amazing. I am just going to read out the next question here coming through. And thank you to everyone for submitting so many great questions. How do you make the business case to focus on men's health? We have an aging workforce, especially with our male colleagues, but our organization doesn't see it as a priority. That is a very good question.
Can help there a little bit if
Yeah.
that helps.
Dave, start off.
Best thing to do is start looking at the cost of your absence. Looking at the cost of absence in our organisation, we are paying way over the odds for absence than any interventory measure. So if we intervene by using PEPI or something like that, if we look at the costs of PEPI for the services that we've bought, the cost pales into insignificance. So if you want to do it on a cost benefit analysis basis, we found that a really useful way of doing that, because it's a very cheap insurance policy in many ways, because if you look at the true cost of absence, it's massive.
Definitely.
And just diving in as well, just to add weight to that, Dave, you know, earlier in the year, the call for evidence about the men's health strategy. So from government, they know there is this gap. So isn't it much better for companies to get ahead and, you know, improve men's health, put things into place? They don't have to wait for a strategy to be put in place. The figures we know, 1 in 5 men are dying prematurely, 2 in 5 before the age of 75, 1 in 5 before the age of 65. This is men in the workplace. We know those hard numbers are available, and like Dave mentioned, relating this to the cost benefit too. But I think the weight is there, certainly. Hopefully, an upcoming men's health strategy in the not too distant future.
Thanks, Bernadette. Amazing. I'm just conscious we have 5 minutes left, so we will continue working our way through these questions. The next one is, we've just launched an internal men's health group. It's run by volunteers. How do we maximize this opportunity? What should we be covering? I love this question. This relates to a lot of work that I do with my clients who do have ERGs or employee resource groups. This one shared that it's a specific men's mental health group, which is brilliant. We don't always see that. So first of all, the fact that it now exists is the first massive step in this process. I'll let our experts answer, but just from my perspective, the fact that it's being run by volunteers, we really want to make sure that people are able to access resources and it doesn't become a second full-time job for these volunteers to run this group. I've been there. I ran a mental health ERG at my last company, and it really can feel a little bit overwhelming. So resources that Peppy shares, just again, from my perspective, there's so many articles, videos, live events that our networks are actually able to tap into our resources that these experts that you see put together, so that you're not having to reinvent the wheel every, campaign that you're wanting to run, every International Men's Day that's coming up. We have the resources to allow you to do that. So there's so much that you can cover internally, but my suggestion, just personally as an employee being a part of these groups, is ask the group what they want to cover and what's important to them. I think it's so easy to come in assuming, and I think, my best advice would just be to really see what's of interest and what people really need, and then go from there. I'll let anyone else share as well. Any thoughts on this question?
I think just be conscious of having a range of different personality types in your group. Sometimes you naturally will, but within certain organisations, you might always get the first people to volunteer will be first in the queue, but actually somebody who's got a really valuable voice would be the last person to volunteer. But their colleagues may see this in them, so your approach to that individual just might be, you might approach it somewhat differently. So I think just have awareness of that, just so almost you're reflecting that true representation across your workforce. And I know that can be a challenge, like you acknowledge, Kayla, actually how much emotionally and physically such groups can put pressure on you, but it's about keeping that balance. But I think, again, it's fantastic that you've got that visibility, and don't try and do too much too soon. You need to be able to sustain it, and people, if something's a bit more I know we speak more bluntly in men's health somewhat, but if it feels easier to engage with, then you'll see more men engaging with it, really. So I think that's really, I think you've covered it fantastically. Thank you, Kayla.
Thanks, Bernadette. Amazing. Well, there are more questions that we unfortunately can't get to with just 1 minute left, so I will make sure we have enough time for me to just thank Dave, Bernadette, and Erin for joining us today. You've all been absolutely brilliant, and just for everyone on the call, who's really come to learn something today. I hope you have, and just remember that culture change really does start small, with those visible actions, and every conversation matters. Every leader, every employee who speaks up, it all matters. So let's all just keep working together and supporting each other and turning more awareness into real action and making proactive men's health a part of the everyday workplace. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll be in touch shortly with recording and follow-up materials. So have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.